Hi, I'm Dr. Semkin. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I graduated from the University of St. Augustine, and I also graduated with my master's degree in exercise and wellness, and graduated with my bachelor's degree from ASU as well. So today we're going to talk about what you guys call shin splints, right? It's also known as mediotibialis posterior tendonitis. So today we're going to talk about and discuss some exercise myths. So you have to understand your science and understand that sometimes you can have the same exercise be really good for one person and not correct for the other person. So just because when you guys start discussing things in class or with your friends, someone might be like, oh, this is what they taught me how to do over here, and this is what they taught me how to do over in this other clinic. And one will say, oh, that's good, and one is bad. We'll talk about that later, specifically with squats. And we will be talking about squats later on and how that helps you with exercises. But you need to really base your exercises all on science, right? And your available evidence, the available clinical, and then your coaching experience, right? So your coach, you got to listen to your coach. He knows what he's talking about. He's been doing this for a while, and he has had really good success. You guys have a great running team. So know that how an exercise is performed matters, right? It's important on how you do exercises, and you do them correctly for what your particular issue is. And since today we're talking about shin splints, we will talk about tendons, right? So shin splints, even though it's a muscle, it's the muscles connect to tendons, tendons connect to bones, okay? And in order to continue with increasing tendons strength, is you have to know how to load it correctly. One of the ways that you load it correctly is through heavy eccentric loading, right? It also takes thousands of repetitions. So just because like I talked about before, you have to understand what you're talking about, because you have heavy eccentric loading and thousands of repetitions. Well, you can't get thousands of repetitions to increase tendon strength with heavy loading, right? So you have to kind of have both of them going on at the same time. Now, most people will tell you that resting after an injury is the best thing for you. But with tendons and shin splints, it's not the best thing for you. So that is correct. You heard, it is not the best thing to do is to rest. Although you do need to decrease your load and put a heavy your load. So if you're exercising 20 miles a week, you need to cut that down to 10 miles a week, right? So you got to cut it in half. And maybe even a little bit more, but you don't have to take it all the way off, right? Tendons need load in order to maintain structure. So most of y'all will get injuries happening in the beginning of the season, or maybe even the middle of the season. What do? You stop exercising for 2 weeks. What does that do to your tendons? Well, stopping and not exercising for 2 weeks, it then decreases your mechanical strength. All right, so your mechanical strength drops after 2 weeks of not exercising, and then you're going to go start running again, and guess what? That same pain in the shin is going to come back. All right, so don't rest, because this causes a catabolic effect in your tendon. Pretty much means your tendons start being eaten up by your body and stop reducing strength, right? So we're going to learn a few exercises later on, a few different systems, and how to treat it. Interesting note on tendons. People always say, oh, my tendon hurts, right? My patella tendon hurts. Or y'all will have, oh, my shin splints hurt, right? Well, the interesting thing is, you actually have no nerves in your tendons that cause pain. It is all peripheral, right? So it just means the pain actually comes from the structures surrounding the muscle and tendon. But it's not coming from the tendon itself. So there's ways to help treat that without, worrying about the tendon itself. So that's a really interesting thing. If you can push through some of the pain, then you can actually treat the tendon, because you're not injuring the tendon with the pain that you're having when you're exercising. So that's a very interesting thing. So there's a new technique out there. It's called extracorporeal shockwave therapy. Now, they've invented a really expensive machine on how to treat tendinopathies, right? Now, don't get me wrong, the machine works really well, but you can actually make the machine with your own hand, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit. So let's just say you have tendinitis in your shin, and your pain's right here. And because you don't actually have pain in the tendon itself, it's actually the connectors around it, but you can actually increase some of it and some of the recovery by doing your own extracorporeal shockwave therapy, right? And all it is hitting that area pretty hard, but not painful. It's not like someone needs to come up and hit you. You just got to be nice and solid and then fast. Right? And that's how you could begin to treat some of your extra pain that surrounds the tendon, right? Because it's not the tendon itself in most cases with a tendinitis, right? Which is, now, we'll also talk about motor drive, right? So motor drive comes from the brain, right? So after an injury, our muscles that surround the joint don't work correctly. So when they don't work correctly, you have to make a new connection with the brain to the muscle in order to correct it. Now that's what I do as a physical therapist, is I do corrective exercises. And part of my routine is actually increasing people's motor drive. One of the ways that we do that is with a metronome, right? So I'll set a metronome to 25 to 30 beats a minute, and it'll just click. It will go. Now on every downstroke, I will have people do an exercise. So on every time it clicks, the metronome, it goes. Right? So you're actually getting a neuro drive. So every time it clicks, you actually have a powerful drive going off. And then thirdly, we want to prevent it from happening again. I will do another video with Steven where he's going to do the exercises, and we will do a prevention program from the beginning. So, and then it's a really good exercise. Then we'll show you some exercises that can help you increase it. So now to specifically talk about the muscles in your foot, right? So the muscles in your foot that cause shin splints generally come from what's called the posterior tibialis. So this bone here is the tibia. Right underneath it, you can come a step closer if you want. Right underneath it is the posterior tibialis. Now it runs down, comes underneath here. You have a navicular bone, and then you have a cuboid. You have a medial cubiform, right? You have a lateral cubiform, and then you have first, second, third, fourth metatarsal. Now, that posterior tibialis comes down and attaches on all 6 of those sites. So it looks like a hand at the bottom of your foot, and it does this motion and in, right? So this, you'll see this motion later on. Now, this motion is super important for running, right? So when you are running, if this muscle is not working correctly, you will have this bone drop down too much, right? So that bone will drop down. And if this muscle isn't working, it drops down and you're not able to lock out your foot. So in our foot, we have the forefoot, we have the hind foot, and of course you have the middle foot right through here. Now, if this is not working together and locking out, such as in shin splints, is what happens is then you get plantar fasciitis, you get pain up through here, right? And this foot is not connecting. So if you look at my foot closely, it should have an arch in it. And this is the longitudinal arch, the medial longitudinal arch of the foot. And it should have an arch when I push off. So when my big toe comes up and I'm doing a push off with running, this needs to have an arch and it has to be stiff. And if this foot is not stiff, this foot cannot push off and make it so you jump or run. So the stronger this muscle theoretically is, the stronger and faster you can run. So that is a very important point. Now we're going to talk about simple exercises to fix things. And it is super important. Now, we're going to go ahead and talk about this here. So this is called the protective effects of neuromuscular training on the medial tibial stress syndrome in track and field athletes. So as what they did with this study is they talk about female athletes in particularly, because they're talking about high school girls, but they are talking about girls that have been specifically injured with shin splints. And they've found that these exercises help prevent shin splints. And not only will it help prevent it, once you have shin splints and you recover from it, it'll help prevent it again and help you recover from your shin splints. So this is a 6-week course. It takes 6 weeks. You do all your regular exercise training, and then you take 20 to 30 minutes after your running training, and then you do these exercises, and it's a neuromuscular training. But the big results out of this, and this is what we will do another video with Steven doing the exercises for your coach to see, for you guys to be able to do. But the great thing about this is this neuromuscular training program applied before a regular season offers a protective effect against injury in adolescent track and field athletes. Okay. Now we're going to actually talk about squats, right? So we talked about squats, and squats are very related to the feet. Okay. So it is important to talk about squats. The biggest thing about squats is that there's a lot of controversy over what type of squat is the best. Now the literature is all over the place with this. It's very interesting to have the literature about squats because there's been scientific literature that shows a partial squat or a mini squat helps runners the best. There's also been squat research that actually talks about doing full squats and what is the best. So the literature that came out in 2019, we will talk about that. The position of the squat is important. So I talked about myths, right? The biggest myth with squats is people used to say that, can you see my knees? Yeah. People used to say that knees over toes was really bad for the knees. It does increase some stresses, but surprisingly, it's not as bad as you think. Now, we will talk about how to run faster in a second, but since I'm talking about the joint forces with squats, we're going to talk about the EMG studies that they do, right? So EMG, they just test and see what muscles are being activated the most when doing a squat. So if you can see me from here, if I have my feet, let's just say equally apart, shoulders width apart, I come down and then I go down and I go all the way down, all the way up. That is considered a full squat. Now, if you do the same squat from the side, right, here, right, from that position and up is considered to be a glute max activator, right, so your butt, right, an adductor activator more than the quadricep. Very important to have glute max strength and adductor strength when exercising and running. Now, your quadriceps are very important to work out as well. So guess what? I can do the exact same squat with my knees together. So my knees together, come down. Now I can't go as far. Come down, come up. Coming from the side view, feet together, right? Down and up. That makes my quads work more, right? So same exercise, different muscle activation, right? And surprisingly, yes, there are some different forces on the knee joint, but they are finding that if you do it safely and you do it correctly, there's not a reason why you should not do full squats, right? So full squats is the back of the thigh touches the back of your leg, and you can use weight with it. Always use a weight that's comfortable. And as runners, generally speaking, you don't have to do maximum stuff anyways. You're not looking to get huge like some of the weightlifters in the gym, right? So you're just here, down, and up. Now, you want to have someone to make sure that you don't have what's called a butt wink. I personally have a little bit because I haven't figured out how to get that last little bit. Now, the biggest myth, when I went to school for my doctorate in physical therapy, I was taught 100%, do not go knees over toes. But now it is okay. So know that myths exist in the literature, and science is always evolving to find new truths. I'll show you another way to do the exact same squat, all right? But you put your heels up on something. I call these about 25-degree squats because the foot's at about a 25-degree angle, all right? And now watch how far I can go with my squat. And it actually activates my quads even more just by having feet together, feet at an angle, and now look. I can go down and do a full squat. That activates my quadriceps way more, all right? Now, we're going to talk about what's called long squats and short squats. Now, if you'll come over here, Stephen, and kind of get me a little bit closer to the wall here. So what they found is if my feet are closer to the wall and I go down, this is considered a short squat. Very strong on the quads, right? Now, I can increase that by increasing my back angle here, and it makes it a little bit more of a glute max exercise. So the chest angle is also important to have, whether we're trying to increase the quadriceps resistance or not, right? So I can be here, and this is very quad dominant, right? Same thing goes here with what's called the short lunge, right? So I'm there. Same thing, and you can see my knee goes over my toe. very quad dominant. Now, if we just kind of come out here, the wall just kind of helps give us our bearings. Now, we also have the large long lunge, all right? Long lunge. Long lunge. Look at my chest angle. My chest angle here makes it so it's a more glute max activator. All right? It still works out the quadriceps, but it works out a little bit more of the glutes by having the chest forward. Right? Now, the exact same thing happens with the squat, long squat. So you can see I'm further out with the squat here, and I go down here. You can see my knees haven't come forward. Because my knees hasn't come over my toes and my chest is forward at a 30 to 40 degree angle, it is a glute max strength exercise. So I can do the same exercise and get a quad activation. I can get a hamstring activation. I can get a back activation. I can get a glute max activation. All from the same exercise. And that is what this article that I'm holding in my hand shows, right? You see both those pictures? Yeah. And of course, black and white, I printed it. I'm not putting this up on a PowerPoint. Sorry, kids. But the biggest thing is that there is a difference on how to do squats, but all of them can be beneficial for you, right? So, this is one of the best running squat exercises there can be, because it's an exercise that increases speed for the first 30 meters. So you sprinters out there, this is a good way to do it as well, right? But this article is called Full Squats Produces Greater Neuromuscular and Functional Adaptations and Lower Pain Than Partial Squats After Prolonged Resistance Training. So back to the very first thing I stated is that there's myths. So the thing I like about this is that it shows that after learning how to do full squats, you actually have lower pain than partial squats, right? So once you learn how to do a squat and do them well and gain the strength through the whole body, you actually have less pain in the knees, less pain in the thighs, less pain in the hips, all right? So it's important to understand that there's a lot of research on squats. That's why there's a lot of confusion, because one scientist comes up with that idea, finds that it's pretty good, and then there's not the same design, so they can't truly compare them together, right? But partial squats are kind of like the mini squats, or even 90-degree squats, right? 90-degree squats, right? So you actually have like a mini, in here they actually put it as full squat. They did partial squat, and then they did half squat. But full squat was the best out of all of them with the measures that they did, okay? So very important to learn that it's okay to do squats in different ways. But as of, this was, oh my goodness, this report came out in 2020, right? So during the pandemic, this guy was writing a research paper and he found that it is best to do full squats in order to increase strength, power, and decrease pain in your knees. This last article that I'll discuss is effects on different speed. So effects of different speeds in ground environment of squat exercise on lower limb muscle activation, and balance ability. Now, as runners, you need a lot of balance and you need it to be good. I'm just going to be short because you guys don't want to hear how awesome this study was, but this study took a metronome, right? So I already talked about the metronome just for a few seconds, but the metronome, they put people with a loaded squat on, right? They took 3 seconds to go down. So they went 1, 2, 3, hold for 2, 1, 2, and then up. 1, 2, 3. They found that to be the best for gaining strength and gaining speed with running, especially in the first 60 meters, right? That gives you a good advantage to know where you're at in the lap, right? When it comes to talking about the differences, stay right there. Now at my clinic, I have what are called wobble boards. They also talked about ground environment. So this is hard cement carpet, and then we have a foam, really imbalanced porpoise. They did a squat here, come down, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right. Now you can also change that last movement, right? So you have the eccentric motion, 1, 2, 3. You have the isometric, which is 1, 2. Now you can go up slowly, or you can actually come out of it fast. Whew. Right? All at the same time, you have a metronome. Click, 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 click. Right? So you can do that, and we will talk about that with your coach some more often. That way, if you guys choose to throw that into your way of training and your weight training days, you will have a wonderful time. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you enjoy it, and we will make another video for your coach to learn how to do all the other exercises. Thank you.